All right, let's dive right in. Today we're tackling continuous renal replacement therapy. CRRT. It's always a mouthful.
It is.
We got a lecture in Spanish from Dr. Conxita Rovira.
A leading expert in the field.
Oh, absolutely. And she really breaks down citrate anticoagulation during CRRT. I think most of our listeners already know that CRRT is it's basically like a 247 dialysis machine for the sickest patients, right?
Yeah.
Constantly filtering their blood.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, for those really critically ill patients who need that continuous support.
Right, exactly. But keeping that blood flowing smoothly, well, in that CRT circuit, it's not always easy.
It's definitely a challenge.
They're prone to clotting,
Uh-huh.
and those clots can really mess things up.
Yeah. Clotting is a huge hurdle. I mean, it can really reduce how well the treatment works, and, sometimes you even need transfusions to deal with the complications.
So how do we prevent those clots in the first place?
Yeah.
Dr. Rovira seems to have a favorite.
She does. She's a big proponent of citrate anticoagulation.
Yeah.
Which, it's becoming more and more popular. It's a really great alternative to heparin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which is what heparin is like the old standby.
The traditional anticoagulant. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's break down this citrate. What makes it so special? How does it work?
Well, citrate, what it does is it binds to calcium in the blood.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, calcium, everyone knows calcium, big part of the clotting cascade.
Right.
So by binding up all that calcium, the citrate basically stops the clotting from happening right in the CRRT circuit.
So it's all about calcium control. But why is that regional effect so important? The fact that the citrate mainly acts within the CRRT circuit.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with the fact that regional anticoagulation, well, it's a game changer because it really cuts down the risk of bleeding,
Okay.
complications.
Yeah.
Because with heparin affects the whole body, the whole bloodstream.
The whole thing.
So it's this balancing act trying to prevent clots in the circuit, but not causing bleeding elsewhere.
Right.
Citrate is much more targeted.
So, presumably that's got to be safer for patients, right? Fewer bleeding problems?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
There's still research being done, but the early evidence is really promising.
Okay.
Longer filter life, fewer bleeding events, maybe even better survival rates.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now I'm really intrigued. Let's get into the details of Dr. Rovira's protocol. It seems like she's very specific about how she does things.
Oh, yeah, she's very detailed.
Yeah.
Starting with the catheter, she really prefers that right internal jugular vein.
Uh-huh.
Her second choice, that would be the right femoral vein,
Okay.
then the left internal jugular, and then the left femoral vein.
So no subclavian. I noticed she avoided that completely. Why is that?
Well, the subclavian vein, it's often used for central venous access, but it's just riskier.
Okay.
Higher risk of thrombosis, especially in these patients who are already so sick.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it's right there by some major arteries and veins.
Mm-hmm.
So a clot there could be
Yeah.
really bad.
Right. So it makes sense to avoid it.
Yeah.
Safer to go with the other options.
Yeah.
Okay. Besides the catheter, what are some other key elements to her protocol?
Well, Dr. Rovira really stresses how important the fluids are.
The fluids, right.
She uses a diluted citrate solution, not a concentrated one.
Okay.
The dialysis fluid, that's going to be calcium-free.
Okay.
And then she's got a separate replacement fluid and calcium chloride to really fine-tune the patient's calcium levels.
Like a balancing act then. Taking out the calcium and then putting some back in.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to find that sweet spot.
Right.
Too little calcium, you get clotting in the circuit. Too much.
Right.
And then you've got all sorts of other problems.
Like metabolic chaos.
Exactly.
That sounds like a lot to keep track of. Did she mention any special equipment?
She does.
Yeah.
She likes the Prismax machine. It's newer.
Okay.
It's got a nice interface. And it's got a blood warmer built right in.
That's handy.
It is. She also uses, a standard CRRT set and a specific calcium chloride preparation.
Okay.
Everything's chosen very carefully with safety in mind.
That makes sense. So
Yeah.
we've got the catheter, the fluids, the equipment. What about the dosage? Is there like a standard dose of citrate or does it depend on the patient?
Well, Dr. Rovira, she's all about a flexible approach
Okay.
based on the patient's weight.
Makes sense.
The goal is to get those ionized calcium levels just right.
Okay.
So we're aiming for 0.25 to 0.40 millimoles per liter in CRRT circuit and 1 to 1.2 millimoles per liter in the patient's blood.
And how do they keep track of those levels so closely? That seems like a lot.
Blood draws, regular blood draws,
Yeah.
from the filter and from the
Oh,
patient.
okay. I see.
You have to stay on top of it. It's constantly changing.
Constantly adjusting. It sounds like walking a tightrope almost.
Yeah, it is. And, one of the trickiest things is getting the patient's ionized calcium levels normal before you even start CRRT.
Ah, okay. So you're already behind if they're low to begin with.
Exactly. And you also have to watch out for citrate accumulation.
Citrate accumulation, right?
The signs can be subtle, like an ionized calcium ratio over 2.5,
Okay.
unexplained metabolic acidosis, or maybe their calcium infusion rate just keeps going up.
Okay, so those are some very specific things to be on the lookout for. Sounds like the lab monitoring is super important.
It's crucial. Regular ionized calcium, magnesium, phosphate checks,
Okay.
and sometimes zinc, selenium, and vitamin levels too, because those can be affected by the CRRT.
So it's a balancing act. Electrolytes. And the whole metabolic picture, you're trying to keep it stable.
That's a good way to put it. It's a complex dance, but it can be done with close attention to detail, regular monitoring, and a willingness to adjust.
Okay, and speaking of adjustments, I know CRRT is not, one size fits all. Dr. Rovira mentioned choosing between different modalities like hemodialysis versus hemofiltration and different anticoagulation methods. What all goes into making those decisions?
Well, you've got to think about what molecules you need to remove,
Hmm.
small waste products or bigger molecules,
Right.
and then the patient's condition.
Okay.
Are they septic? Fluid overloaded?
Right, right.
All those things help decide which modality is best. Hemodialysis or hemofiltration?
So you're piecing together this puzzle then, trying to find the right CRRT modality and the
Yes.
right anticoagulation.
Yeah, exactly. It's all very individualized.
Okay.
And of course, the machines themselves.
Right.
What's available? Fresenius, Baxter, the new Prismax,
Right.
all those factors come into play.
So it really requires a deep understanding
Mm.
of the science, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but also the art of critical care.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Right.
And yeah, Dr. Rovira really emphasized CRD as this dynamic therapy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just set it and forget it,
Definitely not.
just like you would adjust, say, antibiotics or ventilator settings.
Yeah.
You do the same with CRT,
Right.
right?
It's constantly evolving. It has to match the patient's changing needs.
That makes a lot of sense. So the treatment plan has to evolve right alongside the patient.
Exactly. You need to be flexible, attentive, and willing to adapt.
So it's a lot more involved than just, hooking someone up to a machine and walking away.
Yeah.
It's a constant process.
It definitely is. But it's also what makes critical care so challenging and so rewarding,
Yeah, absolutely. Constantly adapting, fine-tuning, individualizing, to give each patient the best possible care. And that's really what it's all about, isn't it?
It really is.
So it sounds like you really need to be on top of your game to manage CRRT well. It's much more hands-on than I realized.
It's true. It's not a passive treatment at all. But that's part of what makes critical care, well, so challenging and rewarding. You're always adapting and adjusting, making sure the treatment fits the patient's needs as they change.
Dr. Rovira clearly has a ton of experience with this citrate anticoagulation. Did she have any practical advice for, other healthcare providers who are thinking about using it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Her biggest suggestion was to start with what you're comfortable with. So if you're more familiar with heparin, start there and gradually switch over to citrate as you get more confident.
That makes sense. Don't jump into the deep end right away.
Exactly. It's about taking it step by step, building your knowledge and skills. She also really emphasized the importance of monitoring.
All right, because with citrate, it's all about those calcium levels, keeping them balanced.
Exactly. Regular blood draws, close observation, making those adjustments, it's crucial.
So it's not just about knowing the science. You need to be meticulous and be ready to adapt.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Knowledge, skill, and vigilance. That's what makes a good critical care provider.
If citrate anticoagulation is so great, why isn't everyone using it? What's holding it back?
That's a good question. I think part of it is the learning curve. It's just more complex than using heparin, so it requires specialized knowledge and training. And not every facility has the resources for that, unfortunately.
So even if people want to use it, there might be these logistical hurdles.
Exactly. And then there's the cost. Citrate solutions and the equipment, it can be more expensive than used as heparin. So sometimes budgets get in the way, even if it makes sense clinically.
But doesn't that seem kind of backwards? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if citrate prevents complications and helps people get better, Wouldn't that actually save money in the long run?
You would think so, right? But healthcare economics are complicated.
Right.
Sometimes the upfront cost can be a barrier, even if the long-term benefits are clear.
So we've got the training, the cost, and then there's always just that general resistance to change in any field, really.
That's true. Healthcare can be pretty traditional. It's hard to shift those paradigms. But the evidence for citrate is mounting, and I think as more research comes out, more people will adopt it, and that's good news for patients.
It's encouraging to hear that, things might be moving in the right direction. Now, we've been talking about anticoagulation in CRRT, but can you remind us about the different types of CRRT? Like Dr. Rovira mentioned, using both hemodialysis and hemofiltration. What's the difference?
Sure. So both of them are types of CRT, but they work a bit differently.
Uh,
Hemodialysis that mainly removes small waste products from the blood through a process called diffusion.
Okay, so it's like filtering out impurities.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Okay.
Hemofiltration, on the other hand, removes both small and large molecules, and it uses convection.
So it's a bit more, well, comprehensive in terms of what it can remove.
Exactly.
And citrate anticoagulation can be used with either one.
That's right. So the decision of which one to use, hemodialysis or hemofiltration, and which anticoagulation to use, it all depends on the specific patient, their needs, and the clinical situation, and of course the expertise of the team.
It's really all about personalized medicine then.
It is, and I think we're only going to see more of that as we learn more about critical illness and as technology improves.
Dr. Rovira mentioned this too, about how dynamic CRT is.
Right.
You're constantly adjusting it just like you would with antibiotics or ventilator settings. It's not static.
It's very responsive. It has to be. You're always assessing and fine-tuning the treatment. And that means you need to really understand how everything interacts, the patient's body, their illness, and all the nuances of the CRRT technology.
It sounds like you're a bit of a detective trying to piece together all the clues.
Uh-huh. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're using lab results, vital signs, imaging, everything.
And your own clinical judgment, too, of course.
Right. So before we wrap up our deep dive into citrate anticoagulation and CRRT, what really stood out to you from Dr. Rovira's lecture?
I think it was her emphasis on continuous learning. She really stressed that it's not enough to just follow protocols. You have to understand why you're doing things. Be curious, keep challenging yourself to learn and grow.
It's a good reminder that healthcare is always changing. You can't just stand still.
Exactly. It's more than just mastering the technical stuff. It's about a certain mindset.
Right. Being curious and always pushing yourself to learn more, to do better for your patients. It's inspiring. Even in critical care, which is so technical and complex, there's still room for innovation.
Absolutely. There's always something new to discover.
And that's what makes it exciting. So I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about the details of citrate anticoagulation, the different types of CRRT, and the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of critical care.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you've learned some new things, and maybe you'll even be inspired to explore this further on your own.
Remember, knowledge is power, but it's only valuable if we share it, discuss it, and use it to make a difference.
Well said. And until next time, keep asking those questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep. It's amazing how much thought goes into picking the right treatment for these really sick patients.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all thing.
You're right. Every decision matters.
Yeah.
From the CRRT modality to the anticoagulation,
Right.
it all affects how the patient does in the end.
And it sounds like keeping up with the research is key to making those good decisions. That's where Dr. Rovira's experience really comes in handy.
Oh, absolutely. She's very meticulous and always on top of the latest research.
So in her lecture, she talked about some of the challenges and some of the opportunities for the future of CRRT and anticoagulation.
She did.
Can you tell us a little more about those? What's on the horizon for this field?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles, like we mentioned before, is getting more people to use citrate anticoagulation.
Right, because it's got so many advantages.
It does, but the learning curve, the cost, and just the fact that people are resistant to change, those are all factors.
So it's not enough to just have a good technique. You have to figure out how to actually make it work in the real world.
Exactly. And that takes a lot of effort on multiple fronts. Education and training for healthcare providers, policies that encourage cost-effective treatments, and really fostering that culture of innovation in critical care units.
So we need a kind of system-wide change to really see the benefits of citrate anticoagulation.
I think so, but there are also some really exciting opportunities out there.
Oh, like what?
Well, technology keeps advancing, and we're getting these new CRRT machines that are so sophisticated, that are monitoring, easier to use, and safer for the patients.
So the tools themselves are evolving to make CRT more precise and more patient-focused.
Exactly. And there's a lot of research happening too. People are looking at using citrate anticoagulation for a lot of different conditions, not just for CRT.
Really?
Yeah, things like acute kidney injury, sepsis, even some types of cancer.
Wow, so the potential applications are much broader than we initially thought.
It seems that way. We're just scratching the surface.
And that's exciting.
It is, and it shows you how powerful scientific inquiry can be when you have dedicated people like Dr. Rovira who are constantly pushing the boundaries.
Well, before we wrap up, I just want to thank you for taking the time to share your expertise with us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I always enjoy these conversations.
Me too. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this exploration of CRRT and citrate anticoagulation. We hope you've learned a lot, and maybe we've sparked your curiosity to dive a little deeper into critical care.
Remember, knowledge is meant to be shared and discussed, so keep asking those questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Well said. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring this incredible world of knowledge and discovery.